Hello and welcome to Outstanding English. My name is Todd Alpervitz. In this lesson, we'll be continuing to explore phrasal verbs. Specifically, we'll be going over work and business related phrasal verbs today. So thank you for joining. If you're watching us live, you are free to ask questions anytime you'd like in the chat, and I'll get to them at the end of the lesson. Also, if you have example sentences you'd like to make, you can put them in the chat box and I'll go over them at the end of the lesson. And also, if you're watching the replay, feel free to leave any questions you have as a comment. And so for today, when I was designing this lesson, I started realizing I'm making this lesson way too big. And right now is 8 o'clock local time. I got to pick up my children at 9 o'clock. So I split this up into two sections, actually two parts, so that I'll do part one this week and part two next week because it was just too much to cover. So for today, we'll be going over a brief review about phrasal verbs. We'll talk about common phrasal verbs used in meetings and discussions, ones used about project management, communication, decision making, and then we have two dialogues also. So welcome everybody. So if you were here last week and you heard my explanation about phrasal verbs and you're like, oh, that's too easy, Todd, no problem there, then go get yourself a cup of coffee or brew some tea while I go over this one more time. So basically, a phrasal verb consists of a verb with an adverb or preposition, and that adverb or preposition is called the particle. And it's important to study phrasal verbs because sometimes the meaning of them cannot be figured out if you know the meaning of the verb and the particle afterwards. So for a phrasal verb like fall down, if you know fall and down, you can figure it out pretty easily. But for a phrasal verb like put off, one that has multiple meanings, it might be a little, well, it's impossible to know the definition of this if you know put and off. The definition of those two words do not match the definitions of any of the phrasal verbs meanings for put and off. So because they have multiple meanings and we can't really figure out most of them by knowing the individual words, it's a good idea to study them to move from being an intermediate level speaker to an advanced level speaker. So here we see we got different types of phrasal verbs. We got transitive ones. Now these need an object, and intransitive ones don't need an object. An object is the word or part of the sentence that is affected by the verb. So an example of an intransitive phrasal verb is wake up. It doesn't need an object, so you could say, I woke up at 6:30. Transitive phrasal verbs can be either separable or inseparable. So for example, separable means you can put the object between the verb and the particle, like this. I took off my shoes. We could take my shoes and put them between take and off, took off, and that would become I took my shoes off. Or we can use a pronoun, say, I took them off. However, we cannot put that pronoun at the end of a after the phrasal verb. So we couldn't say I took off them. We had to put the pronoun between the phrasal verb there. I took them off. And inseparable ones, the object needs to go after the phrasal verb. We cannot put it between the verb and the particle. So we have I look after my brother, I look after him, but we could not say I look my brother after because look after is inseparable. We can't split it up. So I hope that little review was useful for you. Now I'm going to get into some useful phrasal verbs about meetings and discussions. So my first one here is bring up, and bring up is separable. And bring up means to talk or to start to talk about a particular subject. So my example sentence here says, during the meeting, he brought up his concerns about the policy changes. We could also say during the meeting, he brought his concerns about the policy changes up. And another definition of bring up, which is very useful, is to look after a child until he or she is an adult. So you might be watching a movie and they say that that a character was brought up by her aunt, means that for some reason this child's parents were out of the picture, were not around, so this child was raised or brought up by her aunt. And my next important phrasal verb we're going to go over today is go over. And this means to consider, examine, or check something. And go over is inseparable. We cannot put our object in the middle. And this example sentence says, in today's meeting, we'll go over our quarterly report. So we cannot take our quarterly report and put it between go and over. This is inseparable. It has to stay together. We'll go over our quarterly report. And my next one here, we have a wrap up. And the definition I'm using for a workplace or business setting is to complete or conclude something. And this says, I promise to wrap up our meeting before lunch, which means I promise to finish our meeting before lunch. And wrap up is separable. So we can say, I promise to wrap our meeting up before lunch. And another definition of wrap up is to cover with paper or soft material, like I wrapped up our Christmas presents, or I couldn't finish my sandwich, so I wrapped it up and took it home. And then over here, my next special one about workplace phrasal verbs is point out. And this means to talk about or mention something that one thinks is important. So this is separable. So for this example, it says, during the presentation, the sales manager pointed out her team's key achievements. We could also say, during the presentation, the sales manager pointed her team's key achievements out. It is separable. And point out can also mean to direct someone's attention, usually by pointing a finger. Like we could say the museum guide pointed out a rare fossil on the shelf. Means they kind of pointed to it, or they just said, hey, look at this one, and talked about it. They pointed it out. And my next special phrase verb here we have is to break down, which means to divide something into smaller parts. Breakdown is also separable. So for this example sentence, it says the team leader broke down the complex task into smaller, manageable steps. We could also say the team leader broke the complex tasks down into smaller, manageable steps. All right, so another definition of breakdown is when a machine stops working. So I can say our washing machine broke down and we needed to hire someone to fix it. And it can also mean to lose control because you are in a lot of distress. Distress is like when you're very emotional because you are sad and worried. So we could say the child broke down because he couldn't find his parents at the busy shopping mall. All right, so that is breakdown. And another definition, let me see here, is when a relationship stops, kind of ceases to continue. So you could say their friendship broke down, which means they stopped being friends with each other. And our next one about project management is the phrasal verb carry out. And carry out is also separable, and it just means to perform a task. And the example here says the team carried out a risk assessment to identify potential challenges. So because this is separable, we can also say the team carried a risk assessment out to identify potential challenges. And so there's carry out right there. And then my next one about project management is to hammer out. And hammer out is also a separable phrasal verb, and it means to work out the details of a plan or agreement. So we can say, we met with the team to hammer out the details of the project schedule and allocate tasks. Or we could say, we met with the team to hammer the details of the project schedule out and allocate tasks. So there we have hammer out. And then my next one over here is to follow up. And follow up is also separable. and it means to pursue or investigate further. To pursue or investigate something further. So it says, after our team meeting, I followed up by sending a quick email to see if anyone needed assistance. We could split this up and say, I followed up. Hey, can I separate this definition? Let me see. After the team meeting, I followed up by sending a quick email to see if anyone needed any assistance. Followed up. No, this is inseparable. I misspoke. I'm sorry about that. For this definition, follow up is inseparable. Sorry about that, folks. And then my next one over here is to bring in. And to bring in is a separable phrasal verb, and it means to ask somebody to do a particular job or to be involved in something. So this example sentence says, we brought in a social media specialist to grow our online presence. And online presence would be like a company's Facebook page, their X or Twitter feed, their Instagram feed, and maybe their website and their YouTube channel. So we could also say we brought a social media specialist in to grow our online presence. So next up, we have phase in, and I also included in the example the opposite, which is phase out. And these are also separable, and it means phase in is to start to use or do something gradually over a period of time, while phase out is to stop using or doing something over a period of time. So this example here says our company is phasing in flexible workstations and phasing out cubicles. So we could say our company is phasing flexible workstations in and phasing cubicles out. Cubicles are those workspaces with those walls that go up not too high, maybe like 5 feet high, and there's a little desk, and it's kind of private. You can hear the people around you, but you have some privacy, but not too much. While a flexible workstation would be maybe you have your laptop and your things on a cart, and you can push the cart and work from maybe a long table and collaborate with others, or maybe you can push your cart towards a standing desk that is by the window, or move around where you are engaging in your work. That is a flexible workstation. I think those are all the rage these days. And my next special phrasal verb here is to get across. And this is separable. I had the separable edition of the example sentence down below. And get across means to manage to make someone understand or believe something. Such as in this sentence, it was difficult to get my point across because of technical issues with the projector. So that means that the projector wasn't working, so the person had difficulty getting their point across. So because get across is separable, we could say get my point across or get across my point. That's two ways we could say or write this sentence. And our next one is the phrasal verb sort out. And this means to deal successfully with the problem. And this can be separable. So this example says, I'll sort out the issues with the budget spreadsheet before presenting it at the meeting. We could also say, I'll sort the issues with the budget spreadsheet out before presenting it at the meeting. And informally, the phrasal verb sort out means to deal with a troublesome person, usually by punishing them. So sometimes I get asked by maybe a student's homeroom teacher, oh, how's the class? How's everybody doing? And I might say, well, they're all pretty good, but sometimes one student maybe falls asleep during class. Then that teacher may respond to me, oh, don't worry, I'll sort them out, which means they will give them a talking to and encourage them to do better in class, or maybe threaten to tell their parents about their performance in the class. Usually that doesn't happen though. And my next one here is to pass on something or to pass on. And this phrasal verb is also, hey, this one is inseparable. Pass the information on. Hey, wait, this is separable. And this means to tell, give, to tell someone something that another person has told you, or to give someone something that another person has given you. So you could say the manager asked me to pass on the latest updates to the entire team, means the manager told you something and you had to go find the team and tell everybody else. Or you could say the manager asked me to pass the latest updates to the entire asked me to pass the latest updates on to the entire team. And so this can mean to tell someone something that something that another person has told you, or give someone something that another person has given you. So if my coworker wants to lend a book to my wife, they might say to me, "Pass this on to your wife and hand me the book because I will take it to her. I will pass it on to her." All right, so very good. That one was kind of a tongue twister there for me. And this one, we have way up, and this is also separable. And this means to think carefully about the advantages or disadvantages of something before making a decision. And we usually talk about way up when talking about the costs or the benefits of something or the risks involved in it. So this says we weighed up the costs and benefits and decided to upgrade our computer systems. So we had to think, well, it's going to cost this much money, but at the same time, we won't have to worry about resetting our computers all the time. We don't have to worry about it slowing down or freezing on us. So we had to figure out, is it worth the cost for these benefits? And you can separate this. So we could say we weighed the costs and benefits up and decided to upgrade our computer systems. And weigh up can also mean to kind of observe or talk to somebody to try to judge their character or their abilities. So you could say, we weighed up the new hiree and felt that he wasn't going to be a good fit for our company. And over here, also about decision making, is to narrow down, and this is also separable. And it means to reduce the number of choices or possibilities to a smaller number to make it easier to make a decision. So this says the manager narrowed down the list of applicants and decided who to interview. We could also say the manager narrowed the list of applicants down and decided who to interview. And we narrow things down when we're thinking about making a big purchase. Maybe you need to buy a new laptop. You may have, your top 3 choices, and then you go down to your top 2 choices, and then you finally choose one that is a proper fit for you and your needs. And my next special phrase verb here is to back down. And this is inseparable. And it means to admit you were wrong or to stop supporting a position. So this example sentence here says, despite the initial disagreement, the team backed down and compromised on the project launch date. So maybe the team said they needed a later launch date or start date for something, and the other group wants it to be earlier. So they compromised, they backed down, and they were able to move that launch date to an earlier time for maybe their client or their boss or whomever. And my next phrasal verb here, to hash out, means to talk about something with someone in order to reach an agreement. And this is also separable. And so this example says, we hashed out the details of the new proposal and ensured everyone was on the same page. We could also say we hashed the details of the new proposal out and ensured that everyone was on the same page. So hash out, you may hear this. We usually talk about hashing out the details, usually collocates with details. I'm trying to think of other nouns it collocates with. Hashed out the details or hashed out the terms. We hashed out the terms of the agreement. And next up we have is to put off. And put off is also separable, and this means to decide or arrange to delay. So to decide to delay something or to arrange to delay an event or activity until a later time or date. So this example says, despite the initial plan, the company had to put off the product launch to address quality control issues. Quality control is making sure that each product is up to a certain standard. So we could also say had to put the product launch off to address quality control issues. Another, I would say, definition of put off is to cause someone to dislike or distrust. So you could say his attitude really puts me off, means something that person does really bothers you and it makes you dislike them. All right. Welcome, welcome. And oh, no worries. You can check the replay for what you missed earlier. It's okay. It's okay. And our first dialogue here is all about making a decision. So I went ahead and underlined all the phrasal verbs that are going to be used in this dialogue. There's quite a few. So I'll read this, and then if you can answer all the comprehension questions, that is awesome. And if you can't, you can always check the replay. I'll be putting up timestamps later this evening. Well, evening my time. I don't know about your time. And this says, hey, Jessica, we've been discussing the new software choices for a while now. It's time to narrow down our options and make a decision. Absolutely, Alex. I've gone over the proposals, and I think we can narrow our choices down to the top three. However, there's a bit of hesitation about the budget implications. So the budget implications would be the total costs. I understand. Let's not put off the decision any longer. I suggest we schedule a meeting with the IT team and the finance department to hammer out the details. That's a good plan, but there's some resistance from the IT team about the learning curve for the new software. We might need to address those concerns before moving forward. So when we talk about the learning curve, that talks about how long it takes you to learn a new skill. So some software, it's a kind of a fast learning curve. After maybe a tutorial, a quick tutorial, you can jump in and use it. And others are quite a much more difficult learning curve and may require several hours of training to be able to use effectively. True, we can't ignore their concerns. Let's bring in a representative from the software company to help us carry out a training session. This way, we can help the team understand the benefits. Good idea, Alex. It's important to make an informed decision. If there are still concerns, we can follow up with additional training sessions. This might ease any hesitations. Agreed. Let's schedule the meeting, hash out the remaining details, and make a well thought out decision. All right, very good. So I'm going to jump over here for our understanding check. Do you see like a flicker of the light behind me, or is that just my screen? Let me know if you're looking closely. If you see like a flicker on me, I don't see the flicker on my camera, but I see the flicker on my screen. So if you are seeing a flicker, let me know, and I'll have to troubleshoot and see what's wrong with this later. Maybe it's just me. So here are my check for understanding questions. It says, what is the main purpose of the dialogue between Alex and Jessica? What is the suggested action to deal with the learning curve? Concerns raised by the IT team? Why does Alex recommend bringing in a representative from the software company? And what is the agreed upon plan at the end of the dialogue? So if you got all those, great. And if you missed one or two, you can go ahead and review after our lesson. And next up, our second dialogue, this is our last one, is all about strategic planning. So we got two people again. We got Tom and Sarah this time. It says, hey, Sarah, I wanted to bring up the proposal for the upcoming project. Have you had a chance to go over the details? Hi, Tom. Yes, I've gone over it. I wanted to point out a few potential issues with the timeline and resource allocation. Maybe we can hammer out the details during our team meeting tomorrow. Absolutely. Let's address those concerns. Also, I think it's time to bring in some external consultants to carry out a thorough analysis of our current processes. So, external consultants would be consultants you hire from outside of the company. Good idea. We can use our expertise to break down the information and identify areas for improvement. Once we've done that, we can phase in the changes gradually to avoid disruption. Agreed. And we should follow up with a training session for the team to ensure everyone is on the same page. After that, we can wrap up the entire project. Perfect. Let's carry out these steps efficiently. And if needed, we can wrap up the final details in our follow up meeting next week. Sounds like a plan. Let's get started on this and create a timeline to phase in the improvements and phase out any outdated processes. All right, so here we have our 5 questions for our second check for understanding. And they are: what issues does Sarah want to address during the team meeting? Why does Tom suggest bringing in external consultants? What strategy does Sarah suggest for implementing changes in the project? What is the purpose of the training session mentioned by Tom? And what is the final step discussed in the dialogue for implementing improvements in the project? All right, so we got put off is new for me. Yeah, very good. So remember this, we had our definition and we also have our new one, which is to cause someone to dislike or distrust. So very awesome there. And so for next week, I told you I split this up into 2 parts. We're going to do a quick overview again of what phrasal verbs are. We'll talk about phrasal verbs related to team collaboration, phrasal verbs related to dealing with challenges, phrasal verbs related to career advancement, negotiations, and again, we'll have 2 dialogues and some dialogue check for understandings to make sure everybody is all on the same page. So thank you for joining me this evening, everyone. I hope you all have a wonderful weekend, and I will see you in the future. Goodbye.